Hello and welcome to KoshienCast, the only podcast that's forced to take a character named Sandy McDougal seriously. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much. I am just here to discuss the 9th week of the winter anime season with you, Matt, where we'll be covering every sports anime that aired between the 26th of February and the 4th of March.
Well, I'm glad you considered me, because I am here to... Because I do have one announcement here. Sadly, Teekyu, we are done covering, at least for right now.
Well, yeah, so it was... Only 8 seasons have been released, and this week we both watched the 8th season of Teekyu.
Right.
But luckily, it does have 2 spin-offs, so for next week and the week after, we'll be covering the 2 one-season spin-offs, starting next week with Takamiya Nasano Desu, which is a Nasano-centric spin-off that I don't really know anything about, and I'm just going to go into blind.
I have a feeling it's really not going to be that different from the normal TQ.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe it'll have even less tennis. But so all that being said, would you like to start us off with Yowamushi?
I would love to. Okay, so this week we have the climax to the Minami and Toho race, which is not really too much of a climax. It's basically Minami constantly still showing his regret over failing the team. He actually is kind of regretting actually starting up a rivalry with Onoda in the first place, because it was that inspired Onoda to actually keep trying harder, and so Minami is feeling like the loss at the Inter-High is really his fault. And Toho kind of chides him a little bit and basically states, like, look, man, you didn't really do anything wrong. It's probably good for you to have this loss so you can actually race a little bit harder. Because it's like, you have a rival now. You can kind of grow a little bit between each other. After that, Toho still wins the race against Minami, like by a pretty decent margin. It's not really about the race at that point. And then we kind of cut to Kuroda and Arakita, who start their race, and we start getting a little bit more background on Kuroda, who we find out was actually like a sports prodigy, because he would join pretty much any team, and he would be able to essentially dominate at that team. But then he joins a cycling club, and he kind of expects everybody to sort of, kind of treat him like, like this rock star. And what he finds is that, in particular, Arakita was not impressed, and Arakita manages to beat him in a race. Kuroda asks him for help, and that's where their relationship started. Kuroda manages to beat Arakita, and then the episode ends with Ashikiba going up against Fukutomi. There's not really a whole lot that goes on there beyond the fact that Ashikiba wins. So pretty much what we have established here is that all of the new members, or all of the new core members of the Hakone team, have managed to surpass all of their the former third years, barring Minami. And then the episode ends with Naruko returning to Sohoku, very dismayed over the fact that he's going to have to go to Teshima and tell him he's going to become an all-rounder.
Right.
So this episode, I thought this episode was overall a little stronger than last week's. Partially because we got some decent characterization of Kuroda, because that was kind of the main member of the team now that we kind of needed to get some background on. I mean, I hate to say it, honestly, we probably could have just done with having Kuroda's backstory last episode and just sort of blowing through the other parts.
I agree. This didn't need to be 2 episodes. 2 full episodes.
Right. Like, because we talked a bit about this a little bit last week. Like, we don't really care about the Hakone team beyond just being a rival of Sohoku.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget if we mentioned this. I'm just going to bring it up again, though. The whole thing about Hakone is that, they're supposed to be the dominant force in cycling. They are basically these god kings of cycling who rely on their individual talent. They don't really bond together as a team. Like, they kind of all work independently of one another, whereas Sohoku, they ride as a unit. And, Sohoku riding as a unit is what, brings them is what managed to finally beat out Hakone. Again, it's a sports story that is about as old as time. The problem is, though, that when we start going more in depth with the relationships between the characters of Hakone, they really aren't different at all than Sahoku.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a problem, because the series is trying to get us to care about this team as much as Sahoku, but we also know that Hakone kind of has to win in the end, or like that Sahoku has to be the one that wins in the end. And I guess what the series is trying to do is they're trying to establish all these characters for us to care about, so that we're uncertain about who's actually going to win during the Interhigh, because we care equally about both of these teams. But at the same time, we kind of know that because Sahoku's the main team, they are going to have to be the ones who win in the end.
Well, I don't know necessarily, because they did win the last Interhigh. They might be setting Hakone up to be more sympathetic this time.
Right.
But again, one of the issues we raised last week was that Hakone is being framed just like their main characters.
Right.
And there's no real difference in the philosophy between the two teams. Like, the characters are not identical, but their philosophies are basically identical. Right. The only difference is that for Hakone, they're like, the way they're expressing it is like, we need to work as a team and depend on each other because we're champions. Whereas Sahoku is like, we need to work as a team and depend on each other because we used to be underdogs, but now we're champions. It's really not that interesting of a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's no real like dynamic that's really clashing between these two teams that makes these sort of sports battle series so exciting. Like
exactly.
It does kind of feel like this is a series now. You had kind of had an interesting discussion about this like off like when we weren't recording in the past, when it kind of feels like this is a series that's kind of stretching to become less of a story and more of just a franchise, and a franchise kind of needs to continue to exist. It's like, this is not a plot that is naturally occurring. This is a franchise that is having plot as a necessity to keep the franchise going.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because who do we have left to overcome? Right. That's the thing, is that they broke Midosuji last season, but now he's back and equally evil and equally scary, and we're supposed to believe that. They broke Hakone last season, but now they're back with a couple different members, and now Izumida is trying to act like the third years let him down when he's the one who couldn't keep up. It's just, none of it really adds up. The only thing that I really liked about this episode was getting some necessary background on Kuroda. It's like, okay, now he's not just a background character, he actually has something you can empathize with. But other than that, I didn't get much at all. Like, the Minami story in this one, all it did was reset him back to zero. After the Interhigh, he had been so down and out, and his whole philosophy and outlook had changed, and he'd become a different person. But finally, doing this race, he realized that the best way to be a good cyclist for his team was to be himself. So it just reverted his character back to the way he was when he was first introduced.
Right.
I didn't see much growth. I just saw like, oh, I should have been like I always was all along. The end.
So here's the funny thing. I actually think this would have been a bit more of an interesting story if Minami was actually the main character. Because then you have a character who's become so, maybe not like 100% arrogant, but a little too carefree. Who kind of gets brought back down to earth. You can have a dynamic there where a character needs to, it's about learning to have a balance. That sort of struggle, to maintain, your position within the team, but also make sure that you're not losing yourself in the team.
Yeah.
The problem with this is that it basically, like you said, it's sort of resetting the character to basically be like, this character, like Minami has to just essentially be the same character, but we still have to make him like a sympathetic character because we see how much the team cares about, or how much he actually cares about the team. It feels like it's a little afraid to do much different with Minami, like to not make it's like actively resisting making him an unlikable character.
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
No, I agree. I mean, they could have done something interesting and made this eminently likable character difficult to like, but no, that's not how franchises work.
Right, exactly. It's like no, it's like they can't really give him that character flaw there. That character flaw where even after he loses it, he does, he refuses to sort of understand what happened, like what he did is what caused the team to lose. It shows just this very, he could have still been very self-centered. It could have caused this rift in the team where it's just like, okay, Minami's a serious problem here, guys. He does not care about this team at all, and he is not at all affected. You can do something with that. But, again, because the series wants you to, really love Minami as a person, they have to kind of give him this very minor arc where he has to, go through all of this regret, and it's just destroying his writing style, and all of his friends come together and be like, no, man, you gotta be you. We like you when you're being uncaring. And carefree. And it's like, it's just not terribly interesting.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I'm looking forward to having a character who's unlikable and stays that way, so we can actually have a villain.
Right.
And I know they've previewed other new characters showing up for rival teams, and I just say they can't come soon enough. But yeah, so all that being said, do you want to move on to March?
I actually did have one other thing I wanted to bring up about Yowamushi Pedal this week. I thought... So, there was this whole discussion that Toho had with Minami, because, Minami regrets saving Onoda on the mountainside by giving him some water, and Toho says something along... And, Minami's like, had I never done that, and Toho was like, you would have saved him regardless of whether or not he would, regardless if you guys hadn't, didn't promise to race each other again. See, the problem I have with that, because that's supposed to be the line that really comforts Minami before going on to talk about the whole rival thing. And my problem with that is that the issue wasn't that Minami saved somebody. The issue was that Minami made some sort of strange random promise to this complete weirdo by giving him a water bottle and then vaguely telling him, no, bring that back to me at the Inter-High. The issue wasn't that Minami had saved somebody.
Yeah.
But I don't really quite understand what they're trying to get at here, where they're like, no, Minami, you're a kind guy. You're trying to... you're a good guy. You would have saved him regardless. And it's like, that's not the point. That's not really what's tearing up Minami, but yet that seems to bring him comfort. It's a little weird.
Well, I mean, it's the whole idea is stupid, that as if he hadn't said, bring this back to me at the Inter-High, that Onoda wouldn't have raced in the Inter-High or wouldn't have won, as if that's the thing that did it.
Right.
Even though Onoda is just a ridiculous fantasy character, and he says, I only did this because of your water bottle. I wonder if this'll eat you up inside. But clearly he didn't just do it because of the water bottle. The water bottle came up when he received it, and then came up never again until he gave it back.
I kind of feel like this whole thing with this water bottle, and I did kind of feel like this when I watched it before, but, it wasn't really, it was kind of a minor part of the plot, so I just kind of said whatever, but the fact that they're still trying to bring it back, it feels like they're trying to force this moment with the water bottle as being this very, powerful, symbolic moment within the series. But if I recall, in the series, it really didn't even make much sense at the time, because literally, he gave Onoda a water bottle, he drank it, said thank you, they rode a little bit, Onoda tried to give it back, and Minami said no, bring it back to me at the Inter-High, because we need to have a symbolic gesture at the end of this.
Yeah, and it's always been forced.
Right.
So, speaking of something forced, here's a forced transition to March Comes In Like a Lion, whether you like it or not.
I would have gone with saying, speaking of being forced, Shimano was certainly forced this week in March Comes In Like a Lion.
Mine's better.
You're probably...
So, episode 20 of March Comes In Like a Lion. Shimada is... It sort of starts off with a dream sequence where he imagines that he and his ex-girlfriend got married, and instead of becoming a pro shogi player, he moved back to his hometown. and he gave up shogi. But even in his dream, even though he's happy to be surrounded by his family, he's still torn up inside that he wasn't able to pursue his dream of shogi. So he can't escape shogi even in his fantasies. It becomes evident that in the fourth match, they had to extend it over a 2-day period. So they come back for the second day of this shogi match, and Shimada counterattacks. He tries to force Soya's hand, and separately, Rei and another high-class shogi player named Fujimoto are commenting for the crowd on how the match is going about. Fujimoto has a long rant about how Rei is not as good at shogi as he is, and then tells the crowd that Shimada was weak and didn't deserve to be the challenger for this match. Everyone gives up on him, but Rei realizes that Shimada actually had a path to victory, but even Shimada didn't notice it because he was so overwhelmed by Soya. So he surrenders, Shimada that is. Shimada surrenders the match, gives up, and then Soya shows him that he could have won. That pretty much wraps things up, and Rei escorts Shimada home, but Shimada's sort of broken and exhausted on the train back home.
Right. So I thought this was a pretty strong episode. What I really loved was actually the way the series portrayed how Shimada could have won, because there's this older character who's kind of established as being this it's kind of hard to describe because it's not. Well, I guess it is kind of a stereotype we have in the U.S. with the overly knowledgeable old man who he hates the way that things are done nowadays. Like, yeah. For example, like with everybody makes a big deal out of Rei for being a C-class student, like for being like a rank professional in high school. Like, I was in B class when I was in high school. It's not that big a deal. It's like, and you don't even have the guts to keep going. Like, if you can't even make it past C rank, they're kind of portraying this character as being this overly boisterous and just kind of like overbearingly like arrogant old man who kind of portraying him as being somebody who doesn't really understand how he doesn't understand anything about Rei's life. Yeah, Fujimoto is his name. And what happens is, and you think Rei has his whole like gotcha moment, like this is the moment that's going to bring us around, because it's almost like explosively quiet, because they have this this display board where they're showing all the moves of the game as it's going on, kind of make it easier visible to like a crowd. And Rei and Fujimoto are commenting on it, and Fujimoto just kind of walks out because he's just sort of disgusted with Rei trying to defend Shimada. And then Rei has this moment where he like takes a piece and just slams it down where he should, because it's supposed to be like the quiet like gotcha moment. Like, yeah, you think Shimada's done? Yeah, he can do this. Bam, done. And you think it's like, okay, so this is the moment where Shimada's going to bring it around. No, Shimada is as much a weakness to himself as like anybody else, because Shimada is just so broken by his own body that he has to give up.
Well, I don't think it's that he has to give up. I think it was because the match turned. So like he was trying to outsmart Soya and put on a counterattack, but Soya was able to outlast his counterattack, and when that happened and the match started turning against Shimada, he felt so overwhelmed that he couldn't see a path to victory. He was just sort of acting out what he had to do and reacting instead of thinking proactively.
Right. But I mean, the point I guess I'm just generally trying to get at was, like, you think that moment where Rei puts down the piece, like the way it's kind of displayed with that sort of like, with that very satisfying like clack, that echoing clack, like it's kind of almost like punctuating the moment, like, bam, there you go. Fujimoto proved wrong. But then you kind of realize after the fact, oh, yeah, never mind. That actually wasn't really like the big screw you moment. And I kind of love the way it almost kind of like like takes you off your feet almost when Ray runs into the room and finds out that Shimada already gave up. Because it really kind of helps reinforce the point about, these are not sports anime characters. These are real people. These are not people who can just weather everything and then in a near miracle they see the exact moment where, they can turn everything around and kind of bring down the establishment almost.
Right.
And I think that's what I really liked about that scene.
Yeah, I mean, overall I was taken aback by the fact that Shimada actually lost. I think it's partly because I have too much. The show does a lot to undermine my expectations for a sports anime, and I still come in with the expectation that the main character can't possibly lose 4 times in a row. You can't possibly have the big bad, so to speak, actually be undefeatable and actually never suffer any damage.
Right.
But that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, we can't have Fujimoto kind of walk around like Mr. Big Shot being kind of shouting out like, hey, you're not really worth anything, like if you can't even keep up with me, we can't have characters like that walking around and being proven right.
Yeah. But I did like it. I liked the characterization with Soya you got at the end where he said, he talked to Shimada and he said, you have too much faith in me. And he was disappointed that Shimada didn't see his opening because he wanted to see a beautiful shogi match. He wanted to see a shogi match like he'd never seen before. And he's like, you almost did it. That could have been amazing. But you believed I was too good. You didn't think it was possible that I'd made a mistake.
Right, and that's interesting too about how it characterizes Soya, because it shows that this is a man who, just very subtly, it kind of shows that this is a man who, because he's so perfect, it's kind of the whole, if you don't mind me bringing up a more contemporary anime, One Punch Man. Well, I say contemporary.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is more contemporary than One Punch Man.
Yeah, right. But if you don't mind me bringing something out of genre, it's kind of the same idea of One Punch Man. There's this man who's so overwhelmingly powerful and cannot find a proper champion, somebody that really makes him feel alive.
Yeah.
That, he's just grown bored and sort of depressed with the world because there's nothing there for him. He's for Alexander wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. So, speaking of Alexander the Great...
did you want to talk about All Out?
I wanted to talk about a great episode of All Out. Okay,
fantastic.
Specifically episode 21. Why don't you take it away?
All right. Okay, so this summary might run a little long because this is a pretty rich episode.
Okay.
So the episode begins with Jinko versus another team. They're called Sayako Maji. They're not really super important. The point is that Jinko beats them at the very beginning of the episode. They start getting a little too some of the people on the team are kind of cheering and hey, we actually won one. After the opening plays, the coach kind of scolds them for getting a little too excited over their victory because it's this is a practice match. This is all for practice, and we don't know if the other teams are treating it like you guys are. And so then the next day, the next day they have another practice match. I think that time the team loses, Jinko loses, but as Gion and Iwa are walking back to to their hotel, they come across a tackling machine, which is something that kind of records the score. It's like a punching machine where it'll record the score for how hard you tackle. They even mentioned it's probably one of the only ones in the world. And while they're there, both Keijo and Sagami come by, and so do the rest of Jinko, and they all it kind of erupts into a tackling contest. Jinko, I won't go too in depth with it. Jinko does manage to win. And then at night, Gion sneaks out for more secret training, though he hasn't decided what he's actually going to do. He sees Kifune outside, still practicing, And we get a little bit more backstory on Kifune, who has been, who doesn't really have like a lot of talent, but he can kind of predict where the ball will go. And so he really doesn't want to give up rugby because it's the only sport he's really been able to play where that's been terribly useful. The coach overhears them, and he helps them practice some more at night. And then the following day, we have Gion out and about again, going with Iwa to like a crepe shop where they run into Ryujin of the Ryoan Academy, and who's getting his own special crepe made. And then the rest of Ryoan shows up, along with Yoshida, and Yoshida asks Ryoan for a game. And that's where the episode ends.
Yep, that's it.
So, what did you think of this episode?
I don't know. I mean, I appreciated the fact that they had to deal with arrogance for the first time.
Right.
Like, they had to confront the fact that just because, they won 2 games in a row, and it was very easy to, they had this underdog mindset, and it's very easy to lose that when you start feeling like, oh, we're actually good at rugby now,
right,
or whatever. And so I like that the coach sort of squashed that pretty quick, that like with 2 things: one, reminding them that they need to maintain that underdog mindset, but more importantly, to remind them that wins and losses don't matter when you're practicing. He's like, I'm not here to win, I'm going to let everyone play. I want you to try different stuff, and I want you to learn. Like, why are you talking about winning? That doesn't matter.
Right. Because it's like, it makes sense, because, when they went up against Tenjiku, it kind of makes sense for them to go in with that winning mindset, because, it was their first game of the practice.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of their chance to show, hey, what we're doing right now actually works.
Yeah, they needed to win one to prove that they could.
Right, but, now that they've done that, beaten such, a pretty decent team, now it's like, okay, we are not here to actually, like, win the practice.
Yeah, exactly.
We are here to see what we can do, what will work, and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what I also like about what they're doing here, by quickly going through these games that, Jinko is winning, it does very quickly establish Jinko as being this is a team that's growing and getting stronger without having to go through and playing so many other games like that we have to watch. It's getting that power dynamic set up now very quickly. So because we have the implication that, like, oh, okay, they've won so many games during this practice match, but like, it shows that they are starting to become a little bit more dominant. People are starting to talk about them now around the city, because hey, there's this real underdog team that's actually getting through, and like, they managed to beat Tenjiku, an up-and-coming team. They're actually, like, pretty consistently winning games during this practice session.
Yeah, and then we'll see this sort of finalized with their match against Ryoan, which you have to assume they'll get. And probably it'll be a two episodes or so to round out the season. Then you'll have another episode or part of an episode to get them back home and talk about the fact that they just lost to Ryoan.
I was gonna say they're probably not gonna win the game against Ryoan.
Oh, they can't. They can't possibly. But it will set up the power dynamic and what they have to do before they face them again. So.
Yeah, it will fully establish Ryoan as being the end goal.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be... I was disappointed the twins were gone. I have a feeling that they'll make a dramatic reappearance at some point, but...
Oh, there's no chance that they won't. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
I did also like the usage of the tackling machine in this episode. First of all, because again, they even bring up, hey, this tackling machine, like, no other place in the world could actually support something like this outside of Sukudaira. Because, again, it's already been established that this is basically the rugby city.
Maybe nowhere in Japan. I think...
Well, yeah. Sorry. But yeah, nowhere else in Japan would actually have, like, a tackling machine for, like, outside of Sukudaira. What I also liked about this was how it was showing how the different teams were coming along. Not even so much for just for our sake, because so Jinko manages to win the tackling contest because what they end up doing is they have 3 representatives from each team come together, and like they basically square off, and whoever gets the most points in total wins the competition. Jinko just barely manages to edge them out. But what's interesting about that is just before the contest begins, Gian eagerly tackles the machine because he thinks, hey, okay, contest starts, I'll go first. And so we get to see his score as being like 150, which is what they mention is a decent score. But then you see the other characters go up against this machine, both, and what we see is like, yeah, Gian is actually not really that strong yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the winning individual scores, Hirota, who obviously is just a much larger person than Gion.
Right.
But even so, everyone who participates gets a higher score than Gion.
Right. And I think what I like about that is that it manages to show how it kind of sets up where Gion needs to get to next. Like, he's good now, but he's actually not quite that strong yet.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting about that is that they managed to kind of do it in a very natural way without forcing Gian to actually being a part of this contest for some dumb reason.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what a lot of other series would have done.
Oh, yeah, totally. Because he's not a physically large person, so why would they want him doing it? He can't possibly put as much force into his tackles as someone that's 3 times as heavy as him.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I just also want to bring up real quick, I'm not big on Hirota as a character. That is kind of my weakness with this episode.
He doesn't have much characterization other than liking to eat a lot.
Right. They have this weird extended sequence where they're gonna end on Hirota being like the anchor for Jinko, and he ran away to go get food, so they have to go bring him back.
Yeah, and trick him into coming back by telling him they'll buy him ice cream, and then he goes crazy, and he's like, of course I need my ice cream, so he gets the biggest score. It's like, okay, we get it. He likes eating.
He's fat. I get it.
Yeah, I did write down the quote, "The appetite of a chubster and culinary grudges know no bounds," just because that's a phrase I don't think I'll ever see again. The last thing I wanted to talk about with this episode is the background on Kifune.
Right.
What stood out to you about Kifune?
What was interesting to me was that he actually, so the whole thing that they established with Kifune is that he has like a ritual he performs before he kicks the ball, where he kind of holds it up to his head and almost like prays to it. And basically when the coach comes by, he mentions that, you know what, like, I actually am not against rituals like that, because Kifune is kind of embarrassed because he's like, look, I realize it doesn't add anything. It reminds me of something actually from Baby Steps. And I won't go into like spoilery things, but basically in Baby Steps does something similar where it seems like, hey, these sort of like dumb rituals, they're just superstition, they don't really do anything. But what they actually do is that they provide sort of a calming measure for the athlete. And like, it's like, it's not really based in any sort of real logic. It's just, but what it does is it's like a placebo effect. You do it so you think, okay, it's going to have an effect. And the coach kind of says something to that extent where he's just like, look, I'm not against it. I think it's great that you do it. Whatever gets you, whatever helps you calm down.
Yeah, it helps reset your mental space, basically.
Right.
I liked the fact that he's not just a guy who showed up. He's someone who has a history with sports. He played soccer for 6 years, but he never really felt like he belonged.
Right.
And so the only reason he joined rugby was because like soccer wasn't going anywhere for him, and but the rugby team was recruiting anybody, and
right.
he got recruited by Abumi of all people, and so he had some sense that if he couldn't do it on this team of random misfits, he wouldn't be able to do be an athlete anywhere, and he wanted to try. Right. So I like the fact that he wasn't just a kid who randomly showed up. He was someone who had a background, but he was sort of alienated just due to his personality. And I thought it was funny that of all the people to recruit him, it was his polar opposite, Ibumi.
Yeah, definitely. It does kind of, it does a lot to also show how Ibumi has also kind of made an impact on the team by I'm actually not sure where I was going with that.
Well, what it shows is that because Ibumi is an outsider in a different way, it makes it where other people who feel like outsiders might feel like they have a place there.
Okay.
So I like that. I like the characterization about the team. It helps me understand a little more about why all these random people showed up on this team in the first place. So yeah, I'm glad they did it. Something else I'm glad about is that Tiger Mask didn't suck. Do you want to tell me about it?
I think actually you should tell me about it.
Oh yeah, it's my turn. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
So this is Tiger Mask episode 21. It kicks off with a couple of tag team matches. Tiger Mask is in a tag team match, and everyone comments that it doesn't seem like he's in his proper form. We later come to realize that he's not in his proper form because he's agonizing over whether Rory thinks he's dumb because he talked about having money when she has more money, and that takes up about 5 minutes of this episode. Anyway, the more important tag team match is Tiger the Dark, aka Takuma, and Kevin are fighting in Madison Square Garden, and he has a dynamic victory against the Metal Brothers, and no one in the crowd cares. And then he leaves the stage, and Tiger the Great III comes on and defends his belt against Bigfoot, suplexes this impossibly large man, and everyone goes crazy. Then Takuma and Kevin and Tiger the Dark all go to Japan. Tiger Mask himself has a match against a Mexican wrestler who got poached by GWM. And he, of course, wins and then confronts this Mexican wrestler named El Caracas. He confronts him and says, like, why would you abandon Mexican wrestling? GWM is trying to destroy small organizations around the world. Why would you enable them? Takuma gets angry about this and confronts him as Tiger the Dark, and they get in a fist fight in the hallway that is recorded by the press. And Miss X says that it's good that they were fighting because it'll help build hype for their rematch.
Right. Okay, so I surprisingly did not hate this episode. It was not too... This was the sort of episode that felt a lot more confident, and honestly, this should have been the episode that happened after Red Death Mask.
Yeah.
Because this is actually this is the first time that I have ever felt like that there has ever been any sort of dynamic between Tiger Mask and Tiger the Dark.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the name of the show is Tiger Mask Double because there's supposed to be two guys in tiger masks.
Right.
Like that's why there's a W, is because it's pronounced double. But the fact is, it's just been two separate and unrelated storylines for most of the show.
Right. But what's interesting is, okay, now we have a different philosophy. Tiger Mask, he doesn't just hate Yellow Devil. He hates the organization that actually enabled Yellow Devil.
Right.
To kind of go out and do what he does. Like, this is an organization that is... that's destroying the livelihoods of other people just for their own gain. And, there are people who are just like, people aren't fighting against it. Like El Caracas, he just sort of gave up, and, he gave up on his own gym and his own organization just for the sake, because, he wanted to keep making it as a wrestler, and, his organization wasn't doing as well. Whereas Tiger the Dark, or Takuma, apparently doesn't actually have any issues with what GWM is doing. He just hates Yellow Devil. But he doesn't actually necessarily disagree with their philosophy.
Yeah.
Because, it's the whole idea, it's like, the strong. It's about it's like, they're dying out because they're weak, and so it's not GWM's fault. And it's like, okay, now I feel like there's an actual clash here.
Yeah, the only issue I have with that is, so Tiger Mask is frustrated that other people are wrestling for GWM and getting them a big profit, whereas they're shutting down smaller organizations. But he's saying this after having wrestled in a GWM match. Like, yes, he's not he's not owned. He's not a GWM wrestler. He's a challenger.
Right.
But still, they gave him a raise in this episode. GWM gave Tiger Mask a raise in this episode because of how popular he is and how many fans he draws to GWM events.
Right. And okay, so here is my defense of that. And to be fair, I think what you're saying is a perfectly valid complaint. And honestly, I don't think Tiger Mask has actually established the trust to actually do something like that. I am waiting for a moment, though, for somebody to call out Tiger Mask, because I feel like what they're trying to do there is actually set it up so that somebody can call out Tiger Mask for his hypocrisy there.
Yeah, because I don't totally get what his plan is. He's like, oh, I'm going to take down GWM. Are you? All it seems like you're doing is helping advertise GWM. Like, when they didn't have Tiger Mask wrestling in their events, they lost popularity. And it's not like you're killing these people. You're not making anyone go away. Rising through the ranks, you managed to defeat Tiger the Dark once, but all that did is set you up for a rematch that people are more excited for. Like, what's going to happen when you finally defeat the real Yellow Devil? It'll just be like a good match.
Right. And you know what? That's fair too. And I'm kind of hoping that somebody along the way is going to call him out on that, because I do feel like that if this is going to be a good show, or because I felt like this one showed a little bit more self-awareness about itself than other ones, because there's also sort of an element there where and this is admittedly a little silly, there was kind of a moment I kind of took it where Tiger Mask was apparently a little jealous of Tiger the Dark because Rory was helping him in her job.
Yeah.
Which, because literally he sees Tiger the Dark go into the doctor's room with Rory, and Rory's like, okay, we need to get you taken care of. Let's go. And Tiger Mask sort of stares at them, and it's kind of hard to make any sort of judgment on his kind of emotional state there, because he's wearing the stupid tiger mask, so
right. And
the camera just sort of lingers there as if though that's supposed to mean anything, even though it's just going to always be the same expression.
Right.
But because it's just kind of the staring tiger mask that we always see. But there is kind of something to be said there where is he really that mad at Tiger the Dark because of his selling out to GWM, or is he kind of just taking out his own frustrations right now?
Yeah.
And there is an interesting character story that could be there. But whether or not it's actually going to get into that, Tiger Mask has not really proven that, actually do anything interesting with its characters. It's kind of just gotten by occasionally having a pretty solidly animated and exciting wrestling match.
Well, that is a dramatic overstatement. It has occasionally had a well-animated wrestling match.
Right, sorry. I didn't mean to imply that it always has those.
Yeah, it doesn't. Speaking of something else that is not always well-animated, can you tell me about Minami Kamakura?
Possibly. Okay, so this episode, there's apparently just another club activity, or an inter-club activity where everybody's apparently riding around trying to get stamps for a scavenger hunt, I guess.
Yep.
And so they ride around, looking for their stamps. They're not allowed to use their phones at all. While they're riding, they are assaulted by Kuma once again, who wants another race. And they leave, and so Mahiru and Kuma ride for a little bit, and then Maharu, or Hiromi, I'll just go with Hiromi, that's a good call. She eventually just decides to stop in the middle of the race and is like, you know what, let's just enjoy the scenery. And Kuma's like, okay. And she takes off her gear, and she reveals herself to be the foreign girl that we saw at the beginning of the series. Finally, we have Sandy McDougal.
Right.
And what we find out is that Sandy is a foreign exchange student who just really loves anime and video games and whatnot. So she decided to join the foreign exchange program and travel to Japan. And so she very excitedly rides around with the girls. Even though they first have to get permission for Sandy to even do that. I'll get into that later. While they're riding around, we find out that Sandy is from Colorado, and also there's a horse that Korone's riding on the beach. And we find out because of that Sandy knows how to ride a horse. And then they finish up their stamp collecting, and they go out and ride a little bit more, and that's pretty much the end.
Yes. Yeah. So the function of this episode was get Sandy McDougal on the team.
Right.
And which, they raised the question like, oh, I thought you were in the cosplay club. And she said, no, I didn't join a club. I was just writing for the cosplay club. And they're like, wait, what does that mean? Why?
Yeah, what they're trying to do is they're trying to show, okay, well, Sandy McDougal is not actually part of the cosplay club, so that means she can join the cycling club.
Yeah, and just like that, she goes from being heated rival to being someone who wants to join their team so they can all ride together.
And I just don't understand why they can't just make it so... Okay, I slightly understand for, like, the sports clubs why they wouldn't want members to intermingle, because, they don't want them to, to lose focus of their sport. Cosplay and cycling really don't have anything to do with one another. Why do we have to make it so that Sandy is only part of the cycling club?
Yeah.
It's like there's no reason why she can't do both.
Yeah, are you worried that she's not going to cycle because it's cosplay season? Like she has to train for cosplay?
Right. Like she's got to work on cosplay, but that's not something that takes that consumes all of your free time.
Yeah, it can
ride bikes for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's coupled with the fact that even at episode 9 of, I'm assuming 12, the girls' cycling club has no goals or plans or training regimen or any sense of purpose. So what does it matter if they just hang out and ride bikes sometimes? What's it matter if you do something else? It's not like they're having 2-a-day practices or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to, along those lines, I just want to bring up the fact, why does there need to be an inter-club activity for going around and collecting stamps around town?
I don't know.
Like that's what I don't understand. Like, these girls could just be participating in a club activity, where they're going out and riding around town. While they're doing that, Sandy McDougal assaults them as Kuma, and we can still have the same plot. Why do we have to have a section where they now have to ask permission for Sandy McDougal to join them in this club activity, because they already had registered members in the first place, and they can't just be like, oh, okay, well, Sandy wants to ride with us now, we should go ask a teacher if that will be okay.
Yeah, that was kind of a pointlessly complicated plot element. The whole episode, yeah, it was strange. The horse is something worth bringing up again, where
can I just set this up real quick?
Sure.
Sorry. Okay, so they decide to take a break. They go and so while they're taking a break, they go to the beach, and Hiromi and Sandy are, they're very excited to be on the beach. They're out running around, and fine, whatever, because they've both been generally landlocked all their life. And then while they're there, Korone rides up on a horse.
Remember, Korone's the cat lady.
Yeah, the tiny cat girl who's seriously an adult, guys, for realsies.
Yeah.
And she's riding up with the cafe owner, and they ask Korone, hey, where did you get the horse? And she replies, oh, it's Saruru's. Anyway, you girls want to ride. You didn't answer the question!
Why do you have a horse? Why are you here? What are you doing?
Oh, it's Saruru's horse? Does Saruru have a horse?
Yeah, why?
This is news to agree.
Where
Why
does she keep
have a
it?
horse?
Yeah.
Yeah, where does she keep it? How?
Yeah, exactly. It's just a thing people have.
And seen at Kamakura, apparently people just own horses.
I mean, that's not crazy if you could, like, say, and she lives on a farm, or anything. But no.
Right. But yeah, Saruro, I believe, is she's the cafe owner, right?
Yeah, right. So why does she have a horse?
Right, and that's just never explained, and it's all just an excuse so that Sandy and Hiromi can ride on a horse together, and Sandy can explain that she's good at riding horses because she's from Colorado, and people don't drive cars there, they ride horses.
Yeah, I love that. As if, I just want to find the town in Colorado where there's more horses than cars.
Right, like, it's so weird that they said that. Like, Colorado's not like, I mean, it's definitely, like, more farm area, but, I mean, there's Denver there. There are major cities there in Colorado. It's not like... It's
Wyoming.
Not like, it's like,
yeah, if they'd said Wyoming, you'd buy it, but I don't think anyone in Japan has ever heard of Wyoming.
Right. I mean, a lot of people in America haven't heard of Wyoming.
Yeah,
exactly. Like... Or it's like you could do, like, Montana. There's another one you can do.
Yeah.
But it's like, why Colorado? And then... Like, why do you have to say that everybody rides around on a horse? Why can't you just say, oh, I was raised on a ranch?
Yeah, anything. Anything. The last thing, do you want to talk about Sandy's style of speech?
Okay, so because she's an American, she always has to throw in random English words in the middle of her sentences.
Yeah. And
not only that, her accent is very clearly you described it pretty well. It's a Japanese lady attempting to make an American accent that's attempting to sound Japanese.
Yeah.
It's so weird and like off-putting. Like this is not somebody who is melded to their role. Like you can just sort of hear them in the recording studio doing this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like when Americans will make kind of racist jokes about people from other cultures trying to speak English, right. And it just makes everyone uncomfortable because it's clearly not how any actual human speaks, but it's just how you assume someone else speaks. Right. And so that's how it comes across. None of it sounds authentic. I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I wasn't. I didn't really think they were going to get an actual American to voice Sandy McDougal, but there you have it.
She was always meant to be our dark horse for the series that could maybe
dark horse
somehow. I didn't even catch that. But yeah, she was always supposed to be that character that because we didn't know anything about. Maybe she could come around and save the series, but no, she's worse than anybody.
Yeah.
So speaking of something that's not worse than everything.
That was not your best.
No, it's not. But just talk about IQ or TQ.
TQ, Haikyuu. What's the difference? Alright, so this is TQ Season 8, the last season that has been broadcast. It was broadcast recently. There are a couple episodes that stood out. I liked episode 86, where they go to a ramen shop where the owner does not write very clearly because he keeps a headband over his eyes at all times. Right. He tries to convince the Yakuza not to shut down his shop because his ramen tastes like home, but it's average, so they shut it down anyway.
Can I also bring up? I love how that episode starts with them entering the ramen shop and the guy greets them and he kind of looks at them and he just sort of laughs, not like a very obvious haha haughty laugh. It's just sort of like the smirk, really, you guys are coming in here. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, are we not worthy of your average ramen?
Yeah. They have a 2-episode sequence where they go to the beach again. They comment on how I thought we already had a beach episode, but they go anyway. And they end up all getting separated and stranded because they get on the Titanic and run into an iceberg.
Right.
Later on in the season, they join an MMO, and they all play online together. and Nasuno breaks the game because she's too rich in game.
Right.
And they all develop their own strategy for winning battles and keep declaring throughout the episode, we have a pattern now. But instead of using it to win quests, they just attack anything they see. So they keep attacking NPCs who eventually get their revenge. Later,
what I kind of appreciated about the Nasuno gag there as well was that what I thought they were trying to do there was that they were trying to make commentary on the pay to win mechanics of a lot of online games, where if you want to actually like be competitive, you actually have to buy like the best equipment with in-game money. I kind of thought that was the joke that they were going for with Nasuno, was that because she was already absurdly rich, she could basically be like, there's a terminology for with free to play games with trying to catch whales, where you're trying to catch people who will spend absurd amount of money on like the best gear.
Yes. I thought there was more coming. But then there's another multi-episode block where they have a flashback of how the original three girls joined the tennis club. The highlight of that for me was that they keep accidentally joining the sushi club.
Right.
And they are convinced that there has to be someone in their grade who wants to play tennis, but they keep finding the wrong people. End up it's Marimo. Marimo's the girl who wants to join the tennis club, but she only joined because she wanted to see people's panties. I hate that word, panties. It's so gross. And then
Marimo's a gross character, Matt.
Yeah. And then in episode 95, they have another sports fest. And the highlight of that one for me is they have a race and where Nasuno gets injured because she's too bored. And they have to sprint past the gorilla traps where they're all throwing red bean paste.
Right. And I mean, they apparently 10 years ago it used to be poop, but they had to change the rules for health reasons.
Exactly. And they're like, well, why do they have this event in the first place? All right, so those are some of the episodes that stuck out to me. I liked, I think, so 95 was a sports fest, 86 with the ramen shop, and 91 with the MMO were my favorites.
I just wanted to bring up real quick as well. You did miss out, I think, on what was the strongest gag of the season during episode 94, which was, so at the first part of 93, there's this recurring gag where Nasuno, for her picture, she keeps putting in the picture of the guy who's like on like the highest value yen bill. And then at the very end of 94, they do a callback when they're talking about Kanae is talking with I think Yuri, and she mentions like, and this is how all three of us met, and it's Kanae, Marimo, and then it's the man who is on the bill and not Nasuno.
Oh yeah. She keeps like forgetting, instead of including her own picture, she just puts pictures of money.
Right, yeah, exactly. And then at the very end, it's about how they met, and it's actually about the money and not Nasuno.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, it's pretty great. One other thing I did appreciate during I liked during episode 92 where everybody switched bodies. I did appreciate Kanae trying to make it needlessly more complicated by also claiming that she was somebody else despite the fact that she actually wasn't.
Yeah, 92. I skipped that one, but that one was funny. I liked from that one that it's revealed that Kanae can only tell Yuri and Marimo apart because Marimo has a Kansai accent. And Yuri's like, wait, stop, slow down. You can't tell us apart?
just like we've gone 8 seasons now, and only now are you learning this?
Because we both have blue hair? That really? So I don't know. I thought it was a good way to sort of wrap up the show, at least for now. I thought it was pretty standard quality TQ.
Indeed.
It didn't quite match the heights of last season's bear episode, but
no, it did not.
You can't ask for that every time.
No, I mean they can't all be bear episodes or attacking telephone poles. So,
right, exactly. Those are the easy top 2. But I am interested to see how they do the next season.
Right.
And we'll talk about it next week. So I'll see you then, Matt. And all that being said, would you be willing and able to hit the credits for me?
I guess I can.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.